Well, welcome back. My name is Ted Thomas, and for the last 30 years, I've been involved in the alternative category of real estate. Now, what is that category? Well, it's tax liens and tax deeds. And a little later on in this episode, I'll tell you about that. But tax liens and tax deeds have been around for hundreds of years, but most real estate schools and most brokers, they don't have time to learn about tax liens and tax deeds. But they've been around and they've been sold to the public for over 200 years. And we're going to get into that, and you'll see there's some great opportunities for people like you. So I'm going to answer the question today, and the question is this: who holds title in seller financing? So I always recommend that clients not only try to buy at these auctions and buy for 10 and 20 cents on the dollar, but if they bought it low, I tell them, why don't you sell it low? And when you sell it low, if you can add a financial package to it, in other words, be the banker, you'll sell it even quicker. So my first response when people talk about who holds title in seller financing is that this is an important subject. It's very important. So the person that's asking the question is probably someone that's really interested in reducing risk. So if you'll hold on to that title, like I'm going to suggest, well, then you'll find out that you've eliminated most of the risk. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty of this, I want to mention business is risky. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that it's just this business is risky. All business is risky. So whenever we can, let's try to reduce that. And by reducing that, I'm saying let's not take major risks. For example, if you could buy a property for 10 or 20 cents on the dollar, well, you've reduced your risk quite a bit. So if you can then sell it for 50 or 60 cents on the dollar, you've kept your risk low. It's always a good idea to try to avoid risk. So you don't want to sell anything and not retain the title if you're going to be the banker. All right, so I read a quote from a very famous investor. His name was Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett made millions and millions of dollars in the stock market. Well, good for him. He made a lot of money there, and he continues to do that. And he had a couple of rules about investing. So rule number one was this. Rule number one was simple: don't lose money. And of course, he would have a rule number two. And rule number two was this: read rule number one all over again. And so that was his investment advice. Well, I'll be right back and tell you some not so detailed investment advice as he has, but I'm going to show you how you can avoid risk with tax liens and tax deeds as much as possible. I'll be right back. Okay, well, who holds title in seller financing is the name of this episode. So I'm going to try to give you the meaning and so they understand all this. And on the way, I'll tell you a lot more about tax liens and tax deeds. All right, so the simple answer is, if you're going to provide seller financing, you're going to be the lender, you must hold the title. Why? Because if you don't hold the title and you allow a mortgage to take place, the person that holds the mortgage is going to have the title and you're going to have a problem. So you don't want to have that problem. What you want to do is you want to hold on to the title, and that way that renter, that borrower, whatever you want to call them, is going to make sure they make payments. If they don't, you just simply evict them and they'll lose their money. So you're going to do all this with a written contract. Now, you're not going to have a hearsay contract in real estate. All the states require anything that happens in real estate has to be in writing. Doesn't matter whether it's a broker, doesn't matter if it's a buyer or a seller. Everyone has to have things done in writing. So what we do is we use contracts for sale and contracts for deeds. And they not only outline the principal payments, but they also outline, installment sales, how much they're going to be. They outline who owns the property and for how long. In other words, all the details of the contract are going to be written into the contract to make it easy. All right, now title companies can provide you with those contracts. So you don't have to spend a fortune to get one. You can go to a title company, because they'd like to have your business, so they're going to show you all the documentation that you need to buy or to sell the property. So I'm very positive on using title companies. I'm not negative on attorneys. It's just going to cost you a lot more, and you'll probably have a lot more time involved. All right, so everything in real estate, whether you're buying or selling, is going to require a written contract. Now, most people hate to read those contracts. Now, if you don't want to read that contract, you're making a big mistake. So the way you eliminate risk is you take your time and you read that contract. What you don't understand, let the other people, the experts, explain it to you. Now, it's devastating if you find out something about the contract after it's signed. You want to find out before. For example, what if the people don't pay? What are you going to do? Well, if you have kept the title, you can simply evict them. All right, but if you haven't kept the title, now you're going to have to go through a very costly mortgage foreclosure, which might take an awful long time. All right, you just don't know what you don't know. So the title companies are there to help you. Attorneys are there to help you. You need to understand the buying and selling rules are going to be a little different in each state, but attorneys for that state and title companies for that state will know exactly what to do, and they're happy to help you. Why? Because they want your business and you're going to have to pay for it. Now remember, when something goes wrong, you got a mess on your hands, a real mess, and you don't want to go through that. So in a moment, I'm going to show you, in this episode, I'm going to show you who holds the title and why. And I can start in that process by telling you, once you've given up the title, you have given up control of the property. So you don't want to give up control of the property until you have all your money, because you're now the seller, and what if they don't pay you? Trying to get your money when you have no collateral is a big, big problem. All right, now in my workshops, I do 3-day workshops 3 or 4 times a year. In my workshop, I always take the time to briefly explain the challenge that you have when you're in business. All right, and I do that by talking about the Small Business Administration. Now, who is that? Well, that's an agency of the United States government that actually lends money to small business. But this federal agency will give you a lot of information if you'll ask. Now, they explain to people, look, business is risky. All right, if there's risk, you need to try to avoid that risk. So how are you going to do that? So let's talk about how much risk there really is in a business. Doesn't matter what the business is, how much risk is there really in a business? Now, the Small Business SBA, they keep track of all this. And when they keep track, now you get a place to find out. So according to the Small Business Administration, if 1,000 businesses start, and it's a lot more than that, it's like 600,000 a year in the United States, okay, if the small business starts and there's 1,000 of them, by the time 5 years go by, 80% of those would fail. So think about what I just said. 80% of the 1,000 is 800 failures. There's only 200 left. Now, if you follow the 200 that are survivors for the next 5 years, 80% of those are going to fail. That means you're all the way down to 40 survivors. What part is 40 of 1,000? It's 4%. My point is, you have a 96% chance that you're going to fail. How are you going to avoid that, and what caused it? We know what caused it is, number one, people don't understand finance. Number two, they don't understand marketing. Number two, they don't understand the importance of sales. Those are 3 things that most entrepreneurs don't know enough about. Well, if you don't know those, you better start learning them on the way. Who are you going to learn them from? The people that you don't want to talk to, right? And that means a coach or a guide or a mentor. And the Small Business Administration will tell you exactly that. You need someone that's going to help you. Now, you don't want to just take your advice from anybody. You don't want to take advice from anybody. You only want to take advice, at least in my opinion, from people that are already successful and have a lot of money and high net worth. That would be someone to listen to, especially if they're going to do something that relates to your business. All right. Who else would you want to listen to? Well, you want to listen to people that have a lot of experience and have done it again and again, if that's the kind of businesses you know about. All right. So that usually is a coach, a mentor, or some kind of guide. All right. So those 2 things that I just gave you, I advocate all those things. I'm not just selling my services. I'm telling you what the Small Business Administration has found out after 50 years as a government agency. They know that you only have a 4% chance of, now you're not going to hear that on late night television, but I'm here to tell you, you got a 4% chance of that business surviving 10 years. All right. The ones that survive, there's always a reason. They understand marketing. They understand sales. They understand a little bit about finance. They understand ask questions of professionals. All right, I call those professionals coach, guides, mentors. You need that, someone to help you. All right, so let's go back and think about what the heck's going on here. A lot of people want to buy property. Everybody wants to do that. All right, I want to buy property. When I look at it, I know I'm going to make money. What do I mean by that? I want to know when I buy it that I made money. Now, I've been in businesses that I bought, and I had to wait 10 years for the appreciation to take place and the rents to go up and whatever. When I buy at a tax auction, I can look at the property, figure out what my exit strategy is, say, I'm going to buy in on that one because I know I can make money. So I prefer to buy a property I know I can make. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to buy at tax auctions. So when I discovered those 30 years ago, I never look back. Why didn't I never look? Why not look back? Folks, I could look and see if I can get that for 10 or 20 or 30 cents on the dollar and I could sell it for X, I'm going to make money. Well, I like that decision going in when I invest. I don't want to make the investment and then have to wait and actually pray, which is what most people do. Most people will pray they're going to make money. Well, I can assure you, prayer is not a good business strategy. And if you don't believe me, go back to what I just said. Small Business Administration tells us 96% failure. I'm sure those people didn't go to bed at night and not say their prayers. They said their prayers, that's for sure. All right, so the United States has tons of properties, okay? People don't pay their tax. If they don't pay the tax, the state legislature is going to do something. What are they going to do? They're going to get a hold of the board of supervisors or county commissioners in that county and tell them, levy the tax, collect the tax. If you can't collect the tax, seize the property and sell it at a public auction, and that money, that revenue you receive, will pay the tax. All right, now the county commissioners have power, so they don't go out and exercise it themselves. They send the treasurer down there and the tax collector. If you go to a tax defaulted auction, it's always conducted by the treasurer. The money people know the money, so that's how you're going to learn. Now, what do you want to do? Well, you want to go there and you want to buy for 10, 20, 30 cents on the dollar, somewhere where you got margin so you know ahead of time exactly how much money you're going to make. If you don't know how much money you're going to make, I don't even bother with that property. All right, what kind of properties are you going to get? These are unwanted properties. They're unwanted. The county doesn't want them, that's for sure. The people who are in them didn't pay the tax, so they don't want them. So the county's just going to get rid of these properties, sell them for 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents on the dollar with no mortgage. The treasurer wipes out the mortgage. All right, so that means you're going to get them for pennies on the dollar, sometimes 60, 70, 80% discount. Now, folks, let me just stop for a second. If you can get a property with no mortgage at an 80% discount, can you somehow figure out how to make money? Well, of course you could. You'd figure that out right. All right, so we teach people, buy it low, sell it low, and if you want to attract some people and you want to get it sold quickly, bring your price down below the competition, number one, and number two, use seller financing. Well, when you use seller financing, you want to make sure who holds the title. And the question that we're answering today is, who holds the title in seller financing? That's got to be you. Folks, that's got to be you that holds that title, because once you've transferred title, you're going to have trouble collecting your money. So you hold on to that. So I have hundreds of people come to my 3-day workshops, and we teach them that. Buyers, there's plenty of them. There's plenty of buyers if you're 20 or 30 cents under the market, but there's even more buyers for your property if you're willing to use installment sales. So you're kind of getting the idea. So we have multiple ways to sell the properties. I won't go into those now, but you're getting the idea. But I want to give you 2 cautions before you even go to the auction. If you're going to the auction, here's what you need to know. You need to know that you have to have boots on the ground, that you looked at that property. Why should you look at it? I don't know if there was a windstorm. I don't know if there was a fire. I have no idea what took place. And you want to make sure whatever you buy, you're going to get. So when you buy at an auction, you get property as is, keeping in mind the mortgage has been wiped out. Okay, second big caution. You need to know what your selling strategy is going to be before you buy. In other words, what's your exit? What are you going to sell the property for? Now that'll give you a maximum to bid, so that you'll know you'll only bid up to a certain level because you want margin for profit. So you always want the margin for profit. So my name is Ted Thomas. Right below me, there's a free gift for you. I'll see you on the next video.